Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into a story you might not know, even if you're, pretty familiar with the
A
Beatles.
lot of people think they know everything there is to know about the Beatles, but there are always new things to uncover, especially about their early days.
Exactly. And this story takes us right back to, the heart of Liverpool's music scene in the 60s. Picture it. The Cavern Club, all those bands vying for a chance to make it big, and of course, Beatlemania brewing.
It was an incredibly exciting time to be in Liverpool, and the energy was electric.
So we've got the Beatles, right, on the verge of stardom. But they weren't the only ones making waves. There was another group, a black vocal harmony group called the Chants, who were making a name for themselves with their incredible doo-wop and R&D sound.
The Chants were incredibly talented. They
Ugh.
had this raw energy and these tight harmonies that really captivated audiences.
Oh yeah, their lineup was pretty impressive too. Joey Ankra, Nat Smeda, Eddie Ankra, Alan Harding, and a guy named Eddie Amu.
Eddie Amu later went on to form a pretty successful soul group called The Real Thing. You might have heard of them.
Right. So you've got these two groups, the Beatles, these young lads about to explode onto the world stage, and the Chants, these talented singers bringing that soulful American sound to Liverpool. What happens when they collide? And that's what we're going to find out.
It all starts in a place that's practically synonymous with the Beatles and the Mersey beat sound, the Cavern Club.
Yeah, the Cavern Club, a legendary venue.
It was this dimly lit basement club where, all the magic happened. The Beatles practically lived there in their early days, honing their skills, building a following. It was the heart and soul of the Liverpool music scene.
The Chants, they were no strangers to performing. They were already making a name for themselves as one of Liverpool's first prominent black vocal groups. And their sound, that doo-wop sound, was just infectious.
Those rich harmonies, those call and response patterns, it was music that just made you want to move.
Right. It just gets you going. So how did they end up at the Cavern, the epicenter of it all?
It all started with Joey Ankra. He was pretty charismatic, quite a character, and apparently he had this chance meeting with Paul McCartney at the Tower Ballroom.
Oh, the Tower Ballroom. Yeah, yeah. And Joey being Joey, he managed to, blag his way backstage to meet Little Richard. Can you imagine that?
That's amazing. To just casually walk backstage and chat with Little Richard is a different era, that's for sure.
Totally. And as he's leaving Little Richard's dressing room, guess who spots him? Paul McCartney.
Wow, what a coincidence.
Right. So Paul, being the curious guy that he is, asks Joey, who are you? What are you doing here? And Joey, seizing the opportunity, tells Paul all about his a cappella group.
Well, of course he did. I mean, what a chance to impress a Beatle.
And impressed he was. Paul actually gave Joey a signed note inviting the Chants to audition at the Cavern. A personal invitation from a Beatle.
Talk about a golden ticket. I'd be freaking out.
I know, right? Talk about a sign you're on the right track.
Yeah.
So the Chants didn't waste any time. During a lunchtime session at the Cavern, they waited for the Beatles to finish their set and then practically ambushed them as they were coming out of the dressing room. Bold move.
That takes guts, I'll give them that.
Right. But, this wasn't some kind of calculated move to get ahead. It was pure enthusiasm, a love for music that just couldn't be contained.
And that's what made the Mersey beat scene so special. It was all about the music, the passion, and the camaraderie.
It really was. And, the Beatles, even though they were on the verge of becoming superstars, they were genuinely excited to hear the Chants sing. Eddie Amu, one of the Chants, later said that the Beatles went absolutely apeshit when they heard them.
Really, ape shit.
Yep. Apparently, George and John, they were eating something, I think, and they, ran towards the stage completely captivated. And right then and there, they invited the Chants to perform with them that very night.
Wow, just like that. That's incredible. It speaks volumes about the Beatles' open-mindedness and their willingness to share the stage, especially with a group that was so different from them stylistically.
I know. It was a spontaneous decision, fueled by that pure love for music and a desire to support fellow artists. Talk about a whirlwind.
So the Chants, who had never actually performed with a band before, were suddenly thrust into the spotlight with the Beatles as their backing band.
Can you imagine the nerves? But also the excitement. They quickly rehearsed 4 songs: Duke of Earl, 1,000 Stars, 16 Candles, and Come Go With Me. A mix of rock and roll energy and soulful doo-wop.
It must have been an incredible set.
Oh, absolutely. The audience went wild. But there's another layer to this story that involves a pretty important figure in the Beatles world, their manager, Brian Epstein.
Brian Epstein. the man who shaped their image and guided them to stardom.
Exactly. And guess what? He wasn't initially thrilled about this whole collaboration with the Chants.
Really? Why not? I mean, it seems like a great opportunity to showcase both groups and expand their reach.
Well, you have to remember, this was the early 1960s. Racial tensions were still very real.
Right. And Brian Epstein was a savvy businessman. He was probably concerned about how this collaboration would be perceived, especially by a wider audience.
He might have worried that it could jeopardize the Beatles' success.
It's a reminder of how deeply ingrained prejudice was at that time, even in a place as vibrant and, seemingly progressive as Liverpool's music scene.
Absolutely. But the Beatles, to their credit, stood their ground. They insisted on supporting the Chants, recognizing their talent and the importance of showcasing a diverse range of musical voices.
And that's really what sets them apart. They weren't afraid to use their platform to challenge those societal norms. They didn't let prejudice dictate their actions.
So despite Epstein's initial reluctance, the Beatles' support for the Chants was unwavering. They weren't just lending their instruments, they were lending their name, their influence, to help amplify these voices that deserve to be heard. And it wasn't just a one-time thing.
What do you mean?
Well, their support extended beyond those initial performances at the Cavern. It actually led to a pretty big opportunity for the Chants. Think about it. The Beatles were like on the cusp of global stardom, right?
Beatlemania was just starting to sweep the world.
Right. And to celebrate their success, the city of Liverpool decided to hold this big civic reception in their honor at Liverpool Town Hall.
A very prestigious event. I imagine there were a lot of important people there.
Yeah.
Local dignitaries, politicians.
Oh, yeah, the whole shebang. It was meant to, officially recognize the Beatles' contribution to the city, to celebrate their achievements. So where did the Chants fit into this?
Well, this is where Bessie Braddock comes in.
Bessie Braddock. Remind me who she is again.
She was a member of Parliament, representing Liverpool Exchange.
Hmm.
A real force to be reckoned with. Very outspoken, very passionate about social justice, and she was a big supporter of the Chants.
I see. So she used her influence to help them out.
Exactly. She pulled some strings and managed to arrange for the Chants to be the only other Liverpool group invited to perform at the reception.
Wow. The only other group besides the Beatles. That's a pretty big deal.
It is. I mean, to be included in an event celebrating the biggest act in the world, alongside all those important people, it really shows how much buzz they were generating, how their talent was being recognized.
It's almost like a symbolic moment, You've got the Beatles, these four lads who are about to take over the world, sharing the stage with a black vocal harmony group.
Especially at a time when, let's be honest, racial tensions were still very high.
It's like a glimpse into a more inclusive future where musical talent trumps prejudice. It must have been quite a sight to see.
I can only imagine. And, it's important to remember that this is a time when segregation in the music industry was still very real.
Yeah, black artists often faced discrimination and limited opportunities.
So for the chance to be given this platform, this chance to perform at such a high-profile event, it was a huge step forward.
And the Beatles, by supporting them, were essentially using their platform to challenge the status quo. They were saying, hey, this group is talented and their race shouldn't be a barrier to their success.
They were putting their money where their mouth was, so to speak. It wasn't just lip service. They were actively promoting diversity and inclusion.
And you know what? It seems like Brian Epstein, even though he had his reservations initially, he eventually came around to the idea of managing the Chants.
Really? The same Brian Epstein who was worried about how the collaboration would be perceived.
Yep, the one and only. In 1963, he officially became their manager. It's like he realized, hey, these guys are talented and there's a real opportunity here.
Maybe he saw that the world was changing, that audiences were becoming more open to different sounds and different cultures.
Or maybe he just recognized that talent is talent, regardless of race or background.
Whatever the reason, it's an interesting turn of events. So how did it go? Did Brian Epstein help the Chants achieve the same level of success as the Beatles?
Well, not quite. Unfortunately, the relationship was pretty short-lived. The Chants weren't happy with Epstein's management style. They felt like he wasn't doing enough to promote their career.
Ah, it's too bad.
Hmm.
It seems like even with the best intentions, sometimes things just don't work out. Creative differences or business disagreements can get in the way.
It happens. So what happened to the Chants after they parted ways with Epstein?
Well, they didn't give up. They signed with a different agent in Manchester and continued to perform and record. And remember Eddie Amu, the guy who later formed The Real Thing?
Yeah.
Well, that happened after the Chants split up. And they actually became a major force in the British soul scene in the 1970s.
Really? They were that big?
Oh, yeah. They had a string of hit singles, including one that reached #1 on the UK charts.
Wow, that's incredible. So even though the Chants didn't achieve the global fame of the Beatles, their story is still a part of music history, and their legacy lives on through Eddie Amu's success with The Real Thing.
It goes to show you that talent and determination can take you a long way. Even if you don't achieve superstardom, you can still make a significant impact on the music world.
And sometimes that impact can be even greater when you have the support of others, like the Beatles had for the Chants. So what can we learn from this story? What's the takeaway for us today, all these years later?
Well, I think it speaks to the importance of recognizing potential and lifting each other up.
Yeah.
Like think about it. The Beatles, they achieved world domination. But did they ever look back and think about how their support shaped the Chants' journey?
It's a good question. Did those early days at the Cavern, those moments of shared passion with a group that they clearly admired, did they ever cross their minds as they were, conquering the world?
Makes you wonder, right? It's like how often do we as individuals, as a society even, really take the time to support up-and-coming talent? Are we
Mm.
creating those spaces, those opportunities for those serendipitous encounters, those like mentorship moments that can really make a difference?
It's so easy to get caught up in our own thing, our own success, and forget about those who are just starting out. But imagine if every established artist, in any field really, took the time to mentor someone new, just like the Beatles did with the Chance.
It's not just about individual success either. It's about fostering a whole ecosystem, a community of creativity where everyone can thrive. It's about passing the torch, sharing knowledge, and amplifying those new voices that deserve to be heard.
It's like, what if the Beatles hadn't given the Chance that opportunity? Would Eddie and Moo have gone on to form The Real Thing? Would they have had that #1 hit? Who knows? But it makes you think about all the potential that might be out there just waiting for someone to say, hey, I believe in you, let's do this together.
Right. And sometimes it's those smallest acts of kindness, those moments of encouragement that can have the biggest impact.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the story of the Beatles and the Chants, we leave you with this thought. How can you contribute to a more collaborative and supportive environment? Maybe it's mentoring someone in your field, or offering encouragement to a young artist, or just being more aware of the incredible talent that exists all around you.
And remember, even the smallest gesture can make a world of difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this journey back to the heart of Liverpool's music scene. Keep exploring, keep listening, and keep supporting the music that moves you. We'll see you next time.